The scene had no drama, no speech, and no filter. A fan tried to soften the loss, saying there was still a path, that there was still something to chase. Isaiah likely wasn't having it. He kept walking, clearly irritated, repeating the phrase in the rawest way possible, like someone who's heard that same line way too many times and is simply done. And that's exactly why this moment hits so hard. That comment wasn't just about one game. It was about a pattern, about endings that always slip away, about a team that's hit its emotional limit. Stick with me until the end, because understanding this reaction helps explain why patience is officially gone in Baltimore, and why this outburst might say a lot more about the future than it seems at first glance. You know, when someone reaches a point where they just can't pretend everything's fine anymore? That's exactly what happened with Isaiah Likely. A fan tried to strike up conversation, tried to find a silver lining after the loss. But Likely didn't play along. He answered in the most direct way possible, not thinking about cameras, not worrying about backlash, just saying what had been stuck in his throat. The impact of what he said wasn't just a language. It was how he said it. He repeated the phrase while walking away, like someone who's already said 100 times in his head and finally let it out. It didn't feel like an attack on anyone specific. It felt like a pure release from someone who had just watched another game slip away and had zero patience left for motivational talk. What really makes this moment powerful is that it didn't sound like a quick burst of anger. It sounded like exhaustion. Exhaustion from hearing there's still a chance. Exhaustion from watching the team get close and fail at the end. Exhaustion from leaving the field again with the feeling that something basic went wrong. Again. It was less an explosion, and more years of frustration piling up. And when a player talks like that, out of nowhere in front of everyone, it points to something bigger. That line didn't come by itself. It came loaded with emotions that showed not just in his words, but in the way Likely carried himself in that moment, making it clear this goes way beyond a single comment. It wasn't just what Isaiah Likely said. It was how he looked doing it. As he walked off the field, you could see the weight on him. Tense shoulders, quick steps, head down, zero interest in talking or easing the mood. It didn't look like a normal post-game scene. It looked like someone trying to get out before he blew up even more. That kind of reaction doesn't come out of nowhere. It shows up when frustration has been building for weeks, maybe months. Likely wasn't reacting only to that specific game, but to yet another ending that slipped away, another night where everything seemed under control, and then suddenly fell apart. His body said it before his words ever did. When a player acts like that, it's clear the loss didn't stay on the scoreboard. It followed him into the tunnel, into the back hallways, into that moment caught on video. It's like he was carrying the weight of every recent mistake on his shoulders, with no energy left to pretend everything was still under control. And that body language helps explain something important. Likely's comment wasn't planned, strategic, or calculated. It was a direct reflection of someone pushed to the emotional edge, and a clear signal about the internal mood of this team right now. Even though Isaiah Likely was the one who spoke up, it felt like he wasn't alone in that feeling. The blunt, almost cold delivery sounded like something a lot of people inside that locker room probably think, but don't say out loud. He became an unintentional spokesperson for a shared frustration. When positive talk starts to feel empty, any attempt to minimize the situation only makes things worse. And that's exactly what showed up here. Likely didn't want to hear about math, unlikely scenarios, or outside help. In that moment, all of that felt way too far removed from the reality he had just lived on the field. This kind of reaction usually shows up when a group has lost patience with the same script playing over and over. Game under control, mistakes late, painful loss. When that happens repeatedly, the emotional wear adds up, and eventually, someone lets it slip in public, even without meaning to. And the most telling part? Nobody around seemed shocked. There was no big reaction, no immediate effort to shut it down. That makes it feel like this frustration had already been floating around internally. It just hadn't been said this clearly yet.
All right, we're already past the halfway point of this video, but before we continue, I noticed you haven't left a like yet. It's really important because it helps YouTube keep showing you my content so I can keep bringing you the best news about the Baltimore Ravens. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free and it really helps. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Likely's outburst didn't come out of a vacuum. It hits the exact issue that's been hurting this team for years: the inability to finish games. Built leads, control the moment, everything lined up, and then it all slips away in the final minutes. The loss to the Patriots followed that script perfectly. When that keeps happening, confidence disappears. And without confidence, any positive message starts to sound fake. Likely sounded like someone speaking from that place, like someone who no longer believes this time will be different just because there are still games left on the schedule. That's why his words carried so much weight. They don't describe just one roster, one game, or one week. They sum up a recent identity, defined by failures in key moments, simple mistakes under pressure, and losses that hurt more because of how they happen and how big they are. And the longer that pattern continues, the more likely moments like this ought to happen again. Because eventually, the emotional side just can't keep holding on to promises that the field keeps breaking. Beyond the emotional side of it, Likely's comment also has a real impact on his future. With his contract nearing its end and his role already uncertain, this outburst sounded like someone who might be starting to disconnect from the current direction. He didn't sound like a player protecting his image or worrying about internal consequences. He sounded like someone speaking freely because, deep down, he might not feel fully tied to what's happening anymore. That's not disrespect. It's extreme emotional burnout. When an athlete reaches that point, it's usually because they've already tried everything internally. Talks, adjustments, optimism, patience. And when none of it works, frustration eventually spills out in public, even if it complicates things further. In the end, Likely's reaction makes it clear this goes far beyond one loss or one strong comment. It exposes a team under heavy pressure, a mentally drained locker room, and a player who may be closer to turning the page than many people realize. This wasn't about a curse word or a heat-of-the-moment reaction. It was a snapshot of a worn-down team, a group that no longer buys into recycled speeches after watching the same story play out again. Game in hand, late mistake, painful loss. When someone explodes like that in public, it means patience ran out long before the final whistle. His reaction helps explain why the mood in Baltimore feels so heavy right now. It's not a lack of talent. It's not a lack of mathematical chances. It's emotional fatigue. And when that shows up this clearly, it often marks a turning point, either inside the locker room or in the decisions that come after the season. Now I want to hear what you think. Was Likely's comment just frustration in the moment, or did it expose a much bigger problem inside the Ravens? Drop your opinion in the comments and join the conversation, because this moment says a lot about where this team is, and maybe even more about where it headed.
And if you, just like me, are passionate about the world of football and want to learn more about the Ravens' legacy, don't leave this video without sharing it with that friend who is also a Baltimore Ravens fan and will love this content. See those video suggestions on your screen? The first one was handpicked just for you, and the other is a recommendation from YouTube itself.